If you looked all
Hi,
of it-
everybody, and welcome to the Community Preservation Committee meeting of February 19th, 2013. Tonight we have in attendance Elizabeth Davidson from the Housing Authority, James Davenport from the Historical Commission, Paul Nelson from the Affordable Housing Task Force, and myself, I'm Harry Lockettee, I'm from your Planning Board. We have a quorum, so meeting's called to order at 7:35 p.m. And can we start with the bills? Someone like to give me a motion?
I'll make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Motion by James to pay the following. Seconded by Paul. And discussion. We can start it off. The first two you're going to see are because of that man right there. These two are should be like third and fourth page. Third page.
Yep.
Should look like this.
Yeah.
And, right?
Yep.
Look like that. Coming from CPF 40, and the explanation, the invoice, if you will, looks like this.
Yeah.
Got it, James?
Yep.
With me, brother?
Yep.
Good. Okay. And as you can see, there are the signatures of the three rec path committee members. I'm presuming that's a quorum.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, five.
this is, well, Jeff, you want to explain it? You want to explain what this is? And we're looking at invoice number, what is it, 17?
17 and 18, is it?
17 and 18, yeah, exactly. Sure.
17 and 18. These invoices come from Face Spofford and Thorndike, the design engineers, and they have a team of consultants, and they collect all of their information and bring it into one invoice for the for this rec path, and it's basically taking on Boxford, Georgetown, Newbury, Byfield exactly, and Salisbury. And then the bill goes to the state. The state goes through everything. They go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that everything is kosher on that. And then they sign it and send it through to us. And then Salisbury has volunteered to bring it all together, and that's the summary page that Lisa Pearson from Salisbury puts together and then sends out to each of the towns to give the prescribed percentages that the towns have all agreed to in our agreement with the state. Go ahead.
Yes, as an old project manager,
Yeah.
I would like to understand exactly how, when they look at the bills that come in, they pay them. Are there milestones they're paying them against, or is it just like a big pool that they're slowly tapping into?
It's milestones. It's milestones, and they have certain prescribed amounts that they can charge through 25% design and then 75%, 100%. So and that's what and they have different tasks that they do. You know, when they have their engineers go out, they have a price for how much it is to flag the wetlands, to do any of that type of work. They have amounts, and they determine what percentage they are complete, and then the state verifies that, and then the invoice is approved and passed through.
Is this on a timeline too? Besides milestones, do the milestones have a calendar with them?
The calendar is not always with state work as held to as the milestones for fee. But in other words, the fee is the fee, and they can't get any more money, and they have to gear it towards then. And if the timelines get stretched, that's not an issue for fee. As far as getting more fee, they have to still work within that fee, but that has to be taken into account. Absolutely.
But that just means the schedule starts stretching, correct?
Right.
Well, one of the things I would like to point out is
Okay.
you usually get, and this is my fault, you usually get like 2 pages there, which is what they're actually the two
Yeah.
cover pages. What we receive every time we get the invoice is we get a full packet like this.
Okay.
That I refuse to copy 5 times for everybody.
Right.
Anytime you'd like to look
No,
at
no,
it.
this is more just a generality. I'm trying to get a feel for exactly what's going on, how it's progressing, et cetera, that kind of thing. Since I haven't been intimate into the project, I probably wouldn't understand the milestones specifically anyway.
Yeah, I think you'll see a lot there. I mean, everything's
And I can explain them,
documented.
and I
It's all,
go
yeah.
through the rest of the introduction and
Okay.
everything.
Yeah. Let's, if I can hold you this, because
Sure. Yep,
can we
yep.
focus just on the bills?
Yep.
And we'll get them out of the way, and then we'll go right to you. Does there seem to be anything about the bills that good? It's, the first. We good with that? We good with the bill?
Yes.
It'd be hard to be bad with it. In a sense.
No, I mean, are there any more questions about the bill?
If somebody said it should have cost this, it cost that, or it's late by this amount of time, then I could say something, but I don't have any of that information.
Right. Well, the main thing to keep in mind is that this has all been looked at by the Rec Path Committee, and they're recommending that we pay it. And at this point, we're pretty much relegated to we're a pipeline, is what it is. Moving on to the next bill is Peterson LaChance. That is the appraisal for Wheeler Brook Farm. We have that back now. We received that in PDF a couple days early. I sent that out, a link for that. You also have 2 pages of the really important part with the numbers on it in your packet. That'll come up later again. This is to contract. Any questions?
Nope.
The invoice is right after it. Everybody go with the bills? I'm gonna motion to pay the following bills. You saw them, you know the amounts. All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. If we could start the signatures, that would be really good. Ready, if you wouldn't mind starting that one? And if you guys could start down there, keep that together, please. Great. We're gonna jump ahead just because we have Jeff in the cat seat there. Jeff Wade, Chairman of the Recreational Path Committee, was asked, I believe it was a month ago, at a meeting. The board members voted and asked to have you here just to give a little background, an update, if you will, on where the rec path is. If you'd be so kind, sir.
Great.
Please. That's it. I only gave you
Just the
one.
one?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, there's one more.
So the path.
Just the top 2. That's yours.
That's fine.
So the path originally was part of what was referred to as the B2B, border to Boston. And it was a trail that went from the New Hampshire border down through Salisbury, tying into Newburyport, coming into Newbury, Georgetown, Boxford, Totfield, Wenham, and Danvers, and then coming up to the border of Peabody, and being a trail, a unified trail. And there was earmarked some money for that trail. It was, I believe, $700,000, somewhere around there. Don't quote me exactly, but it's right around that. And not really enough to do really much of anything, including design. So the money wasn't doing anything, and it was sitting in the MPO of Totfield and, well, down south of us, actually. And there was an idea to bring it up because Merrimack Valley Planning Commission was heavily involved in the project from the beginning, because they loved the idea of it and they really supported it. So the money was transferred to their MPO, which meant that it could only be used for towns in the Merrimack Valley region. So that was Boxford up and north. So Danvers and Wenham and Totfield had to go on their own, but also we still do have our B2B overall group meetings that we have. In fact, we just had one about a month ago, not even as an update. What we were able to do is to, Georgetown was the leader in this, is instead of having Merrimack Valley put out to request for proposal from each of the towns as to what they wanted to do with the money. What we were able to do was to bring all the towns together, and that included Salisbury, Newbury, Georgetown, and Boxford, because Newburyport had their trail already finished. So we brought the 4 towns together, and we also worked closely with the state to get some aid from them through some existing contracts with surveyors and wetland delineators and things like that to pitch in, and then the towns all pitched in some money, and that's part of that bill that you're seeing is our portion of that we all committed to. And for something that wasn't even going to be enough for one town to do 100% design, we got all 4 towns to agree and be unified and going together, and we got it as we won the grant from Merrimack Valley Planning Commission.
700,000 or
It
something?
was 700,000 plus 300 or 400 from the state, plus our contributions. The whole package came to about $1.25 million for the design, and that'll take us through 100% of the design, which is hugely important, because then that's this so-called shovel ready. When you're 100% design, then people listen to you, and money is available for you, because they want things to be built. They just don't want it to be years out. They want it to actually be a project.
Who's they in this case?
That they is the state and Merrimack Valley, the MPO.
They're gonna kick in some money pretty quick?
What they have done is already kicked in $700,000.
Right.
And then for the construction, we are on the RTP, which is a regional transportation plan, for monies for the construction of the trail. In fact, when that RTP was established, it was at the low of our recession, and the state was taking money away from everybody, and there was no money, and we still managed to get on the RTP.
What's the RTP?
It's a regional transportation plan, which means this is their plan over the next umpteen years of what is going to happen for projects in the region. And you have to get on that before you're even able to get any money. And if you're not on that, then you're really sunk. And there are some opportunities to come back onto that, but if you're on it, you have an upper hand on everything. And then last year we received word from Merrimack Valley Planning Commission that the state had some extra money and gave it to the MPO, and it was up to the MPO to determine what they were going to do to distribute it. We went after that money, and we came in second, unfortunately. We're going to have half of our trail from West Main north, and including Byfield, built. And we came in second to a project on 97 for Groveland, which was putting in sidewalks for the children to be able to walk to school. And that was considered a more of a safety risk, so they went with that. But we had a good run at it, and it was a good opportunity to get our faces in front of them, so the next time they'll know us that much more. So we're hoping that will work. Now, Salisbury already has some funding for theirs, for their portion of the trail. So even though they came in on the RTP with us, this is one piece, and what they're looking for is not the whole trail, because they couldn't afford that. It's about $1 million a mile to build a trail. I know it sounds outrageous, but it's, if you know construction, and Harry, I know that you're in it, and in construction, I'm in construction. Prices just are a lot. It's a lot of money, and that's what things cost. It's not like building a garage or something, but that's where we live in. I can't help that. But they can't afford the whole trail, so what they're looking for is breaking it up into pieces. So one piece of it was Salisbury's portion from their trail going north and up to their school, and they've already gotten some promise for some money on that. So we're trying to get to the same status of that, and we're on our way. The design of the project has reached a critical spot where it's 25% design. That's a huge, in the state's mind, that's a huge milestone where things really start to happen for them. Right now, the design is done for 25%. It's in with the state being reviewed. Once their engineers review it and approve it, then it'll go to public hearing. Once it goes to public hearing, then it can move into the final stage of design, which actually doesn't even take as long as the 25% did. 25% is a little bit odd. I never did understand that, but it's further along than really 25% that I would consider 25% of the project. So once that gets out into the public and there's a public hearing, then like I said, that'll go into the final design, and then they'll be able to finish that up. It's scheduled to be finished by the end of June. I think it's probably going to be pushed a little bit because the meeting was supposed to be happening the end of November, early December. So the public meeting, so it's off a few months.
So 100% design end of June?
Yes, 100%. That's what's scheduled, and I have not heard officially that that's changed.
100% or 25%?
100% next June. This
June.
coming June.
100%.
End of June. Yeah. The 25% was done last summer, and like I said, the meeting was supposed to be near the end of November, early December, but it didn't happen yet because the state's still reviewing it. So,
Jeff, could I
Yeah.
just interrupt you? I remember at some past meetings there was also the negotiation with
yeah.
the power company there.
Yep.
And there was the whole lease license.
Okay, so
maybe you could fill
Let
everybody
me
in
tell
on
you
that.
about there's two agreements that we're going after right now. One is a license and one is a lease. The lease is a 99-year lease, and to be able to get state money to build this, and the only reason why we'd get a lease, to get that money. It's not the only reason, but it's the major reason why we do that. The state doesn't want to invest money in something that they don't have control over for at least, or the town doesn't have control over for at least 99 years. So, so that's one portion that we have to get with National Grid. The other portion that we have to get, or the other thing we're trying to get, is a license. And this is a license that I believe lasts a 5-year period, and it's renewed, every 5 years. And it gives permission to use and to do work on the trail, on their land for the trail purposes. The town of Georgetown has been trying to get a license from National Grid for about 15 years. I've been working on it for 3 years, and we just had a meeting in January where National Grid, because we are extremely close to getting the license done, and National Grid committed to getting it by the end of this month, and I don't see any reason why that should not happen. So, and I've talked with town
Really,
council
this month?
I've talked with
Glad
town
we had
council.
you in.
Yeah. Talked to town council. They've had a person already. We've had a person from Copeland and Page working with us on this all the way through. We had a separate person who reviewed it for Boxford and for Topsfield, who will also be reviewing it for us. It's the same whole group. And then they will get me a letter so that I can pass that on to everybody to say that this lease is something that, or this license is something that the town should and could sign. So that there's nothing really wrong with it, and it's a good thing. So hopefully, at the next time I come to see you, because when I get this license, I will come and see you,
Great.
and
Because you'll need
hopefully
more
that'll
money,
be soon.
right?
What?
You'll need funds then, right?
Or a few bottles of champagne? Yeah, maybe.
Oh.
No, no, I'm only kidding. I'm only kidding. I can't use it for that. We negotiated a deal with Copeland and Page for their services for this, and that's already been paid for. So, but we are that close to it. So, so I feel good about that. So, anyways, we have now. Once we get the license, that would allow us, like I said, to be able to go onto their land to use it, and also to improve it. Before we can do that, we have to go to Conservation Commission. We're already working with them, with Steve and Howard, town planner, and Sandy Martin are all working on that right now. Sandy is part of our committee, and we are putting in an RDA to find out what we have to do, and we're hoping that we don't have to go through a whole NOI process, but if we do, then we will. Faye Spofford and Thorndike, who's doing the design, is planning on going through an NOI for the entire project because it's a larger project. Ours is a very small portion of that project, so we're hoping that that works, but we'll see as soon as we meet with them. So we'll find out more as soon as we can sit down with them again. We sat down with them once before, so this would be another time that we do that.
Wouldn't brush clearing along the trail be under routine maintenance? National Grid's been doing it for
I don't
60
know.
years now.
Right.
It's a question to be considered.
Yeah.
They do it. They do it all
Yeah,
the
they do.
time.
In fact, they just did it this.
I can understand. I can understand changing wetlands and doing moving stuff, but just cutting grass along the so people can use it right away.
Actually, I think they file every year for that.
Yeah, they do.
They file, but it's considered routine maintenance. So
Right.
They still file an NOI for it.
okay.
They're
Okay.
exempt, where
The-
the town is
yeah,
not.
yeah.
Yeah,
They
they're
don't have
exempt.
the same exemption clause that built into the
Right.
bylaws.
Any other questions for Jeff?
Yeah,
And-
when do you
I
expect
know-
work to actually begin? When did you see physical work actually start on our part of the trail?
Well, once we get our license and we go through with the Conservation Commission, and if things go well, then and we're hoping that the whole trail would be opened up and be allowed to be used because we have to get permission for using it and for building on it from the Conservation Commission. So we're hoping that if we get our license the end of this month, that this summer we would be, or even spring if we could, but I don't know the timelines right now, that we'd be able to start working on it to do some clearing and using it.
So the MBTA owns Topsfield and they own Newburyport. They've already got their licenses, right? The only section is the 6 mile section that Georgetown owns with Byfield, which is
Well,
the
from-
National Grid.
From the center line, from the center of Topsfield on up through Byfield and Georgetown, I mean up through Boxford and Georgetown and Byfield is owned by National Grid.
Yeah, so that's the only section that hasn't gotten a right of way yet.
That's true. Yes. That's
And
right.
That's the only.
We're working on it. We're gonna have a license in
Hopefully
February.
the end of the month.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll keep my mouth shut then.
Wow.
I won't make any projections of why this is being happening. So
And I'm not gonna jinx you by congratulating you, but
yeah.
No. I told you I'll come back when I get it.
Is there a target
looking
date
forward
when
to
people,
that.
people could start actually using it? You know, even if they just use trail bikes or something like that?
As soon as we, now I've never seen anybody use it right now.
no, that would
You're
be
not
trespassing.
allowed to.
No one ever does.
No. But
Full jail then, but that's
again,
a
as
different
soon as we can get approvals through Concom, then we would be able to let people use it in the state that it's in, actually. And then what we will do is we'll ask the public and probably go to Peter and see if we can hire them to do some work too, and actually do some clearing so that we can get going. So use some of the funds for that right there.
Yeah, that'd be great if the people just start
Absolutely.
using it, yeah.
Absolutely, I agree 100%.
I use the one at Topsfield. It's real, and they cross country ski on it now, so it's getting full season.
But if you
use.
walk down, a lot of people dog walk,
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
area
no,
right
yeah.
behind the
Yeah.
Absolutely.
American Legion.
I'd like to open up the section just behind the park so people from Mill Street, from Pond Street, and from can come in from that way, the backside. They can't now because
Right.
it's just been over. The brush has grown in too much. But up until probably 5 years ago, they could. So
Well, we told the state that we wanted to have them survey, because they extended the offer to survey areas of connection to it for us, as long as we were willing to actually build it once we or pay for the design once we know what we want to do. And one of the areas is is going over to American Legion, so surveying all that and seeing what it would take to build the connecting path in there.
yep.
And then a secondary place is up up off of Wells Avenue, where we own some land. The town owns land up there, and even though it's not part of our project, there was conversation that would have a few parking spaces to allow people to go out into the area out back in there.
Cranes Pond Wildlife. Is it Cranes Pond?
Yeah,
Yeah, we just bought all that land
right.
last year.
And I believe that was the
Driftway
intent,
Farm.
is to put something there. So
Absolutely.
what we did is we put in for that as another area to be surveyed, and just to try to help along the town on that. So that was good.
Have you guys ever thought about putting together a little synopsis of where you're at and put it in the records? Because this project is the one I get asked the most about. He says, you're on a CPC, what's going on?
Yeah, I think that I think that's a great suggestion. I'm probably not the best at doing that, and I don't know why, since my personality, but I just don't get myself to do it. But because I probably usually want some big items to be able to talk about. So once we get this license, then I think that's a great opportunity, because then we can also ask for help and stuff like that. So I think it's a great suggestion, and I'll bring that back to the committee.
Maybe you'll have something to report.
Something to
in
report
March.
on.
Yeah.
Something to report on. So
That'd be nice.
Keep my fingers crossed.
yeah.
Any more questions, Betty?
No, hasn't told.
James?
No, I'm all set. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hey, great.
Jeff, I know you have another meeting. Thank
all.
you very
I
much.
do
I
want
know
to
you-
thank you all for your support and putting it through and making the monies available for us. We do appreciate that. And like you said, a lot of people talk to me too about it, and I think it's a great thing for the town too. So
Wasn't us that did it. It was the town that
was the
voted.
town and you guys. So thank you very much.
Yep, have
Thanks.
a good one, thank you.
Okay. Jimmy, just so you're,
Can I mention one thing, Harry? Will have to do with the rail trail as well. Sometime down the road, we have done a study, the Historical Commission, on the trail, and they had asked us, can we point out some of the highlights and the old mills that used to be there and some of the things that you find along the way. So we have sort of a 12 or 15-page report that highlight some of these areas. So at some point, we're gonna be approaching CPC, maybe for signage or something to have. I think there were 5 signs altogether.
great.
Good.
Great.
Yeah, we're
Jeff?
fully in support of this. We brought them in early on, and all got extremely excited about that. 'Cause there's so much on this trail that's historic. So
One of the cisterns is down on the Boxford Georgetown line is there.
Yeah.
So it's pretty neat. It's,
That's a great site.
there's also a locomotive stuck underneath the mud.
Really?
Yeah, it's saying.
If they can find it.
No,
Any
they can
particular
find
location?
It fell into the pond and kept on sinking. So
There's 2 camps that believe that it's
We'll have to get a metal
not
detector.
there.
Yeah,
Another camp that believes it's there.
A metal detector should be able to find it.
okay.
Yeah.
It's
Think
down
so?
like 20
Moving
feet.
along. That's it sounds really good. And we'll move along with the agenda right now. The first thing that we should go to is the Wheelerbrook Farm conservation restriction. The restriction is back, folks. Jim, if you look in your packet, you'll see. Actually, the whole report's here. Probably about page 3. If you're looking for that. Just to let you know, the report came back, and the amount is, well, you can read it for yourself. It's right in the packet. According to the appraiser, the amount of the restriction,
Can you just send a little chance?
yes, that you're looking at the bill.
Yep.
One more page.
Okay.
And that says page 2, and what you're really looking for is page 3. Market value of the subject property is $320,000. Fee simple market value, subject to the easement, would be $80,000. Therefore, the estimated market value of the restriction itself, as of January 28, 2013, is $240,000. You with that, Paul? Right in that packet.
Yep, I got it.
Got that? James,
Mm-hmm.
you with us on that? Keep flipping back, though.
Is it for?
No, flip back.
I just saw it.
You just went by it. You just blew by it, buddy.
Probably just blew by it.
And there you go.
There we go.
Yep.
There it is.
Thanks. Good?
I knew it was here somewhere.
Good. In light of that, the perfect segue.
Thank you, Harry.
The perfect segue to Steve Przymski and
Abby Langsner.
Abby Langsner and Vanessa Johnson from Essex County Greenbelt.
My job for me. Thank you. Harry, we just got the appraisal today. I think Vanessa and I both had a few questions for the appraiser, just to kind of get a feel for example, the backland didn't get mentioned. There's no value put to the backland. So we understand it was great to get this done, give us an idea, comparing the other appraisal. But I definitely think we have a few questions to kind of.
The 18 acres though included the backland, isn't it? If you look at the,
Yeah, it had something to do with 200 foot. And
Yeah,
I
again,
read through it.
Again, I just read
The
through it
bottom
really quick
line is,
today.
the
So
town,
we need to look into it more.
because we have a proposal there that would create, I'm trying to think of the
seen
right
this?
word,
I got it up on the screen.
okay.
a real property interest. If we purchase, if the town moved forward and agreed to purchase the restriction, the CPC would, the CPC monies would be used for a real property interest in the parcel of land. For that, because of that, we're required to get a second appraisal. As good as your appraisal was, as fine as it was, we're not questioning it,
Not mine, it was-
we're required to
yeah.
do that. Because towns are not allowed to spend more money on that fee than the value of the appraisal. If this appraisal came back and said that the conservation restriction value was only $100,000, the town could not pay more than $100,000. We'd have to cap it at that. So, fortunately, for everything that we've seen there, the value is 240, and your request was for 200,000, Steve?
Correct.
If I recall.
Correct.
And it's really a shame that Carl Schrader, the chair of the Conservation Commission, isn't here. This was actually his project request. He's the one that put it in. It's a shame that he can't make it. I didn't hear anything from him though. So I hope
So-
he's all right.
So at the last meeting, I've had my time to talk about this project and all the suggestions we've had. I did bring Vanessa in to answer some of the technical questions that weren't able to be addressed at the last meeting, and also just kind of give an overview on what the restriction is and some of the specifics and the value that they offer the town as far as their expertise and knowledge. Thousands and thousands of dollars worth of value already just getting it to this point, let alone they're putting $50,000 on the table for the actual restriction purchase. So they bring a lot to the table. Vanessa and I, kind of as managing this project, asked Abby if she can come in. Abby's been running the farm with her business partner and friend Andrew for a couple of years. They're going in this year. They're doing a CSA this year. They're really trying to expand the value of the farm to the town. And so I will let Abby give her quick little presentation, and maybe afterwards, if you have any questions, we can hold the questions to the end, if that's okay with everybody.
Great. So first off, thanks for the opportunity to share kind of my perspective on the farm as somebody who's running it, and kind of looking towards the future of the farm and how it can benefit the town of Georgetown and why it's such an important place to preserve. So if you'll just flip through the pages with me. So Willowbrook Farm, an asset to the Georgetown community. First off, I want to introduce you to the current farmers. I know many of you may associate Willowbrook Farm with my grandfather, Bob Morehouse. But I wanted to let you know that there are new people who are currently farming. Myself, Abby Langsner, and my friend Andrew Murray. Andrew and I both began working on the farm as kids, and we quickly developed a passion for growing things. So as young farmers, we're very excited about the future of Willowbrook Farm, and we're hoping that the conservation restriction will help make it a viable future. We have two parts to our farm mission. First, we work to provide the local community with sustainably grown farm fresh produce, while also endeavoring to deepen the connection individuals and families have between the crops in our fields and the food on their tables. While we work hard to offer our customers the highest quality of farm fresh produce, we feel it's the second part of our mission that really makes us stand out. We strive to be a community farm, and we truly believe that the relationship between the farmer, the customer, and the farm itself is truly significant. It's also important to note that our farm mission is in line with the goals presented in the town of Georgetown's open space and recreation plan. These goals focus on the preservation of wetlands and residents' access to scenic conservation areas. And the conservation restriction for Willowbrook Farm will allow the land to be farmed with an environmental mindset and will ensure that residents have access to and are able to develop connections with the scenic areas around them. We have a number of farm goals, which are also in line with the town's goals for open space and recreation. We provide community members with delicious farm fresh produce by operating a farm stand, which is located right on the farm, participating in local farmers markets, and we're starting a CSA this season. Our active presence in the community really helps to
Excuse me,
preserve
what's CSA?
a community-supported agriculture program. So we believe that our active presence in the community helps to preserve Georgetown's small rural feel. We also love offering our customers unique vegetable varieties, including many heirloom tomatoes, squash, and even eggplant. I think that's the 4th page if you're. So this past season, I was chatting with a mother with 2 young boys, and she was complaining that her boys never ever eat vegetables until they discovered our cheddar cauliflower and yellow carrots. We also have another young farm friend. We call him our farmer in training because he comes by the farm so much. And he won't touch tomatoes unless they're our Sun Gold cherry tomatoes. So we always try to have some on hand for him because, like I said, he's a frequent visitor and helper on the farm. So I believe that these conversations and connections with customers are part of what make Willowbrook Farm so special. There aren't many other communities in which you can chat with the farmers who actually grow your food. It's what helps maintain Georgetown's rural feel despite the town's booming population. We're the only farm in town in which customers and community members are actually welcomed onto the property, and the conservation restriction will preserve Willowbrook Farm as a working farm and will help Georgetown maintain its rural charm. As a community farm, we also feel it's really important to give back to our community. We do donate produce to many local food pantries, and for the past couple of years, we have donated gourds and pumpkins to art departments at schools in the area, including Georgetown, Ipswich, and Rowley. We're also active in the local economy, and we've developed positive relationships with local businesses such as Adeline Rood, Carolyn's Farm Kitchen, which offers farm-to-table cooking classes for people in the area, and Enzo Restaurant and Bar, which is actually owned and operated by a wonderful couple, Mary and Dave Riley, who actually live in Georgetown right around the corner from the farm. So it's been a really great relationship. In addition, we also employ several local teenagers each year to help us with our harvests. Not only does this support the local economy, but it also helps these teenagers develop a strong work ethic. And over the past 40 years, we've hired dozens and dozens of local teenagers who have benefited from the many life lessons that working at Willowbrook Farm has provided them. Some of our most important farm goals, and the ones that I think I'm probably most excited about, focus on the direct relationship between our community and the farm. We encourage individuals and families to come onto the farm and explore. We want people to know where and how their food is being grown, and we always invite families to say hello to the animals, play in the sandbox, and stay for a picnic. As stated in Georgetown's Open Space and Recreation Plan 2007-2012, it is one of the goals of the town to improve public access to conservation lands for passive recreational use. In addition, this document states, protecting open space in every neighborhood is also important. No resident of Georgetown should have to get in their car in order to take their children for a walk in the woods. Being able to easily experience the sights and sounds of nature is an essential component of rural life. The simple joys and quiet pleasures of nature can provide important relief from modern life and help everyone, regardless of age, stay young at heart. Therefore, to the extent feasible, every neighborhood in Georgetown should have a parcel of protected open space within it, or a trail leading to a nearby open space area. So the conservation restriction for Willowbrook Farm will help to ensure that all Georgetown residents have the opportunity to get away from it all and relax in the beautiful agricultural environment. We also hope to increase agricultural awareness within our community by providing farm-based education programs, which again fits with the Open Space and Recreation Plan, which says the town must also provide passive outdoor recreation and educational opportunities that meet the community's needs, are accessible to all people, and are environmentally compatible. So again, the goals of the town and the goals of the farm are aligned. A conservation restriction will allow Georgetown residents to continue to benefit from all of the learning opportunities Willowbrook Farm has to offer. In the past, we've organized many school field trips and children's workshops. Topics we've covered include farm animals, beekeeping, flower arranging, weeds and insects, and planting and harvesting. So as an elementary school teacher myself, I'm really excited about continuing these opportunities. And I'm actually planning some field trips and workshops this coming season so that I think we have planned for over 100 children from the Georgetown area and surrounding communities will be able to benefit from those educational opportunities. So I'm really excited about them. Willowbrook Farm has always seemed like such a magical place for me as a kid and as a grown-up. So I'm really excited to offer those opportunities and keep that magic going. So before I finish my presentation, one of the questions that I thought people might be asking is, so why now? Why is it important that we conserve the farm now and do the restriction now? And the simple answer is kind of that now is when we have the opportunity. But I think it's important to mention that all of the necessary parties have finally come together to make it possible to purchase the restriction, including the landowners, Greenbelt, and the town's Conservation Commission. And this cooperation, I believe, couldn't have come at a more fortuitous time because there's still a wonderful community farm that's there to preserve. The conservation restriction will ensure that Willowbrook Farm will continue to be an important part of Georgetown's rural landscape. It also makes the farm a more viable option for any young farmer. The current farmers, Andrew and me, are so excited and passionate about running the farm now and into the future. And our mission and goals for the farm clearly align with the goals of Georgetown's open space and recreation plan. At Willowbrook Farm, individuals and families from Georgetown and the surrounding communities have easy access to a beautiful agricultural landscape. They benefit from a variety of farm-based educational opportunities and are able to connect with the land that sustains them. By taking advantage of this opportunity, this conservation restriction, you will allow the residents of Georgetown and beyond to continue to take advantage of all that Willowbrook Farm has to offer. So if you have any questions for me, I'm
Thank you.
ready to answer.
Betty, any questions?
Well, she's pretty much explained it, I guess.
I've got one.
Yep.
If the CR goes on there, will there actually be public access to most of the Willowbrook Farm then?
In the conservation restriction plan, it's not a guarantee of it. My point is that Andrew and I really encourage that. It's part of our farm goals, and I think, like I said, the thing that separates us apart from other farms is that we welcome and we want people to come onto the property through pick your own, through farm classes, just the facility itself.
What would cause that not to happen?
If for some reason there was a farmer in the future that maybe didn't want to, but like I said, Andrew and I are hoping to take the farm into the future, and we're willing to work with the town to make sure that people can come onto the property because that's something that's truly important to us.
So it may or may not remain open to the public. We can't guarantee that. The restriction, unlike conservation restrictions where we purchase a parcel of land and then Greenbelt protects it with the conservation restriction, this is a little bit different in that we're really not purchasing the land, the underlying fee of the land in this proposal. That stays privately owned.
Right.
We're just paying for the conservation restriction to be placed on top of it.
Right, so that it won't be developed in the future.
Right.
That is a concern.
Yeah. I just have one question. Since the farm already is under Chapter 61 protection, if the farm were to ever change a use and get away from the agricultural use, the town would have first right of refusal to purchase it. And so if the town votes to spend $200,000 to put a conservation restriction or an agricultural / conservation restriction on this 61 parcel, that would guarantee that it would never ever come out of Chapter 61. Is that correct? Because you could never change the use.
I think Vanessa's the technical question
Oh,
person.
okay, good.
Chapter
This is something that
60,
was
Chapter
bothering me.
61 is a separate program. That's a program under the property tax code where a landowner agrees to not develop their property. If it's 61, it's for forestry purposes. They can continue to manage it for forestry. If it's 61A, they agree to keep it in agriculture. And in exchange, they get a reduced property tax assessment.
Mm-hmm.
A conservation restriction and that's temporary. So as you said, a landowner, if he sells the land to a developer, that's a change in use. it comes out of 61, and then the property can be developed, right? With a
But the-
conservation restriction, a conservation restriction is permanent.
Absolutely, and
But
that's
when
my
when a
point.
developer buys it, the town has right of first refusal.
They do
Right.
if they can meet the price
Right.
that the developer has offered the landowner.
Right, that bona fide price, and we would have, we have 120 days to, well, to state whether we would like to or not. And then that begins the process. What I'm saying is if we have a conservation restriction placed on this parcel of land, essentially, all the monies that the town's been not collecting in taxes under Chapter 61 for the benefit of having first dibs at this property, that goes away, because with that conservation restriction on the parcel, the use can never be changed. Therefore, it will never come out of Chapter 61. Therefore, the town would never have first option to purchase.
But that doesn't mean the landowner couldn't sell it to the town in the future.
Just reduces the price, so if the town purchases it.
There's a
in the future-
conservation restriction on it. It runs with the land.
It does, but it's privately owned, so the landowner could still sell the land to the fee to the town.
Right, but the town would most likely want to purchase it for active recreational. And, well, maybe I'm wrong, but my read is that it's non-commercial recreational. It's only passive.
Correct.
So you could never put a soccer field or a lacrosse field there. You could never have
That's correct.
even a softball game there.
If the
A
landowner
pickup- a
allowed
pickup
it.
one. You could do a pickup.
Or maybe a pickup, you know.
And my concern is there's 18 acres, and I know the farm pretty well. There's a section in the back and a section to the right that if the farm couldn't, they didn't want to farm the whole parcel. There's the main parcel in the back, which is probably 7 acres.
Mm-hmm.
They could lease out those 2 parcels to other entities, but
That back field's only about an acre and a half.
So what?
This scale.
So that I got-
And I'm just,
Yeah.
I hear these numbers. There's 7 acres in tillage. That back field's about an acre.
yeah.
That's, again, I've heard the idea of a soccer field back there. That's a tiny field. So I understand the interest in it, but when you bring this back to the scale of the actual usable land,
Yeah.
there's a lot of wetlands out there and there's a lot of.
But I'm talking 4, 6, 8-year-old kids too, who are using a half field. It would make it more compute, and I'm not saying that the property owners would have to do it. I'm just saying it would leave for future use. If they can't establish themselves as a farm, they could farm the main portion, leave the main portion as farmable, but give those 2 parcels and out. You know, that back piece is a fairly expensive piece if we want to be temporary lease for recreational land. It's flat and it's a decent piece of land. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to. But what you're saying is that's going to be left in that state forever.
Perpetuity.
And perpetuity, and I'm saying, well, maybe we consider the town's been not getting taxes for 30 years on that parcel because of the conservation restriction. Well, maybe we let it go
Because
to,
of Chapter 61.
because of Chapter 61.
Right.
I'm just saying, it seems like we've probably paid thousands of dollars to keep it agriculture now. Now we're paying another $200,000 to keep it agricultural. Where's the give and take? And believe me, I've worked that farm, I've worked Muskovich's farm. I appreciate farming. But I'm just saying, where's the halfway point?
I think I see it as the town investing in its quality of life. I think when, I just saw an amazing presentation by Greg Watson, who's the new commissioner of the Mass Department of Agriculture. And in that presentation, he talked about the significance of local farming to maintaining the ecological health of our communities,
Sure.
the economic health of our communities. Local farms in Massachusetts actually contribute quite significantly to jobs and job creation in Massachusetts, and the state is recognizing that on a state level. So it's contributing to the local economy, the local ecology, and people want to live where there are active farms for all the reasons that Abby talked about. And so it's an investment in your quality of life that will make people want to live here, that will make people want to relocate here, make kids want to come back and live here because they can bring their kids to this farm. And that's not something that you will have an opportunity to do forever. The right of first refusal is, yes, it's another opportunity. But in my experience, I used to work for the state before this, for the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and I've been at Greenbelt now for for 2.5 years. I can't tell you the number of times I heard municipalities say, we haven't had an opportunity to protect this land 10, 20 years ago for X amount, and now we're having to pay 10 times that much to accomplish the same thing. If the town owned that property and wanted to run it as a farm, the town would have to have the resources to run it as a farm. I don't know how much it costs, or if you can have an idea of how much it costs to run a farm. But what Abby was mentioning is there's at least 2 full-time people about 6 months of the year working that farm. So the town would have to come up with the resources for that. This way it stays in private ownership. There's still going to be property taxes being paid on it. Whoever owns it and is working it is a member of the community. It's a business in the community. They're buying things in the community. People are buying things from them. It's contributing to the local economy as well, and it's a very important part of the local economy.
I love the parcel. Harry tells me a story when he moved to Georgetown. He basically went into that farm, bought something. It said put the quarter or something in the jar. And after he looked around for the camera for 10 minutes, he said to his wife, "We can make it in this town."
Right.
Because, and that was
Came
his.
from Everett, and don't get me, this, I mean, Wheelerbrook Farm it's a staple of what this community is. It's one of the millstones, one of the milestones of what the town is. I mean, when I think of Georgetown, I think of Wheelerbrook Farm. But sitting on this board, I realize I have a fiduciary duty to the trust, to the fund, and I have to ask, what would this board's do nothing option be? What would happen? We have to explore that. If we were to pass on this in this round, what would happen? And I fall back and say, well, the worst case scenario, it's still in Chapter 61.
And as I brought up, my vision of it is just what her vision is. It stays as a farm.
Mm-hmm.
But if she cannot make it, or she decides that she doesn't want to farm the whole property, she has the right to lease portions of it for kids who want to go and play soccer and then go strawberry picking or blueberry picking after the game.
They could, although I would argue that I think the infrastructure needed for that might not be compatible with keeping it as a
I'm playing
farm.
on-
I think
I'm-
there's a wetland crossing. Isn't there,
There is.
actually
There
a
is.
perennial
There
stream
is.
that would have to be
Part
crossed?
of the reason you couldn't develop back there through that appraisal was the wetland-related issues.
Sure.
And just to access it, to make those improvements, would be very difficult from a conservation standpoint, so.
And I think part of the power of conservation restrictions and the reason why it works for so many landowners is because it does keep them in control of what they can do on the property.
I'm just saying,
And-
an active, the owners would have the right to say, we don't want to lease it, but if they did, they would have that option.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not making it as a farmer, you can lease out those 2 sections for $10,000 a year, and you can put that money back into the sections of the farm that you do want to run. I'm just saying, in life history, if someone gets sick, someone has children at home, it gives them the flexibility. There's in no means, but someone could theoretically do nothing in that farm, and we, as a town, could be looking at all those sections going, oh boy, that farming looks nice. But there's no farm there. You don't have to farm it. It could stay. It could go. Someone could buy that and just sit on it.
Just
Yeah.
pay it. and
Well, I think
that charm.
I don't
a
understand
couple
that's
of
what
things
anybody
that'll
wants.
keep that from happening is that in the conservation restriction, first of all, there's an affirmative duty to farm, which is not something actually that Greenbelt has ever put into any conservation restriction. The state does that with their agricultural preservation restrictions. We typically don't, but the Morehouses have agreed to an affirmative covenant that requires whoever owns that land to farm. And if they're unable to farm, to find someone who can farm it. And if they are unable to find someone to farm it, they actually agreed to put into the language of the conservation restriction that Greenbelt has the right to either farm it or to find a farmer to farm it, to coordinate the leasing of that property, to make sure it stays in active agriculture. Because as every farmer knows, the worst thing that can happen to agricultural land is that it lies fallow and goes back to forest land. You want to, at a minimum, keep it hayed in the time being, but ideally you want to keep it working. And we actually have people young farmers calling us up looking for land that they can afford to lease, that they can afford to work because they want to become farmers. They can't afford to buy the land because it's being sold at its highest and best use, which is for development. A conservation restriction will ensure that young farmers will well, will help ensure that young farmers might be able to afford to buy this land in the future, because it can be purchased for its agricultural value, not for its development value. So a conservation restriction on many levels, in this conservation in particular, the way we structured it, I think gives this property the best option of being able to remain a farm. My concerns about a recreational field, well, I think that's something that, absolutely every community needs. I'm not convinced that this is the appropriate property for that. I'm not convinced that that would actually keep the land in a condition suitable for agriculture as farmland. Also, one of the reasons why this property is so compelling to us isn't only because it has prime agricultural soils on it, but also because of its wetlands and the riparian corridor, its floodplain. It's actually also a water resource district for drinking water supply, and all of the way that we've constructed the conservation restriction is that future farming can only take place with a farm conservation plan, which is what the Moore houses already have, but the conservation restriction ensures that future landowners also have to consult with the Natural Resources Conservation Service to have a farm conservation plan that takes into consideration protecting the water supply. So any agriculture that happens on that property can only happen with the assurance that those waterways are going to be protected. The water quality is going to be protected. There'll be a riparian buffer. And we make sure of that. We as the overseers, and that would be the town too, as a co-holder in the conservation restriction.
It's kind of a dichotomy. I absolutely agree with what you're saying, but in reading the document, I waded through the whole bloody thing. You can actually create a horse farm there. And a horse farm is not compatible with having clean water and stuff like that, or even wellheads in the general area. Yet, if you read the CR, there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that keeps for anybody from putting a herd of horses on there.
Actually, there is. According to if you look at, let me get the page number. If you look at, on mine, it's page 6, it's paragraph, so section 2B, reserved rights, paragraph 4A.
Yes, 4A is the one that actually
talks
controls
about the farm
but it
conservation
has no
plan.
numbers in it.
No, it doesn't, because I think it's really hard. It depends on the animal, depends on where the animals are going to be located on the property. But what this does is I'm not an expert in this.
Yeah.
I would imagine that you're not, unless you're a farmer, you're not an expert in how many farm animals can be on there. So what it does is
Grew
it
up in
says
North Dakota.
they have to consult with the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and what they do already is they'll come out to the property, look at the type of soils, look at the conservation values look at the waterways, look at the streams, and say, this is what this property can hold.
So that's part of the farm conservation plan?
Yeah, so
And then
establish
what
stream and
level of
wetland buffer
enforcement is there?
strips. I'm sorry?
What level of enforcement is there? In other words, somebody can just drop in a herd of horses and you
No,
wouldn't know
because
about it.
Greenbelt would go out there and monitor the property once a year and make sure, one, that there's a farm conservation plan
Right.
that does just this. It establishes and governs the type and number of each type of animal unit permitted or animal permitted on the premises, and analyze the pasturage potential of the premises, and establish and govern the cycling of pasturage. So the farm conservation plan, if they want to have horses, says how many horses can be out there, where the horses can be, if they're grazing, how they have to graze, probably on a rotational schedule of some sort. And we would be out there every year making sure that that's
So
happening.
effectively, this could become a riding stable?
It looks like it if you read the conservation restriction.
I think the back section I was looking at, if we ever get the green belt to go all the way to the farm, people could bring their horses and use that as a dump off spot for, if that parcel wasn't used for farming at that point, to get on the trails that we're going to try to establish with the green belt. But it would take a lot of work to try to get there along the marsh. It's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's a tough one, but someone theoretically, it's tough by Google Maps.
I don't see that connectivity
Yeah.
at all.
There's
There's a green belt.
We're trying to establish them
Oh.
off of Martel Way.
yeah.
Which is,
I mean, but it would take some work.
Yeah.
Helicopter.
But I know Wenham has a 2-acre limit, 1 horse per every 2 acres. It's a simple, it doesn't encompass, like you said, water and all the other things,
Right.
factors that are involved.
Well, if the town wished for something more specific on that level, I could certainly approach the landowner. Would you be willing to limit horses to 1 for every 2 acres, you know? I mean,
Any animal that creates that kind of a problem. If you had cattle, if you grazed cattle, that would be the
Absolutely.
same thing. Yeah.
that's why we put this language in there, because we're very concerned about that. And I should mention also that the landowner has qualified for the state's new conservation land tax credit with this conservation restriction. This conservation, part of every conservation restriction in Massachusetts has to be reviewed at both the town level and the state level. This has already been reviewed at the state level to make sure that it is indeed protecting the conservation values of the premises. So they've reviewed this language to make sure that it's strict enough to protect these conservation values, just to protect the waterways, to protect the soils, because that's the primary purpose of the conservation
right.
restriction.
Irene Del Bono. Remember the name? No? Okay.
Who?
She's an attorney with the Division of Conservation
Ah.
Services.
She reviewed the open space plan and all that
Ah.
stuff. That's why there's some connection.
So what the town is acquiring with the conservation restriction is you're acquiring the right to extinguish development rights on the property forever. That's what conservation restrictions are best at, is eliminating development rights. And it's a lot cheaper to work with a willing seller than it is to wait for the right of first refusal option. And right now you have a willing seller. You have a landowner who's willing to do this. You have an organization that's willing to try to fundraise to also bring money to the table. We have people who are already farming it and who want to continue to farm it, family members who not only have an economic interest in continuing to farm it, but an emotional interest in continuing to farm it. It is an amazing opportunity and a good opportunity to do this. And I guess I would ask that if the Community Preservation Commission is not willing to fund it at the $200,000 level that we're seeking right now, that you would consider what level you would be comfortable funding it at. I'm not confident that this will go forward without some help from the community. And I think it would be of tremendous benefit to the community.
You gotta remember, we have to ask these questions. These questions are gonna be asked at town meeting.
Of course.
Time and time again.
Of course.
This is a little bit tricky with the conservation restriction,
Sure.
conservation CI we had, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Having you on TV, and, you know, our personal opinions are not, you know, even if I wanted this farm 100% of, these questions are still gonna be asked, because they're important for people to know this. And truthfully, at town meeting, we don't have the time to let them know the intricacies of this situation.
Sure. Yeah.
And also bear in mind, this year, there is an enormous amount of competition for the limited funds that are in the CPC fund.
Are there other farms?
No, but this year,
Only road
unlike
crops,
every
huh?
other year, the state legislature changed the rules. You can use open space funds and reserve funds for active recreational purposes.
Right.
So
Yep.
the competition just
Sure.
jumped into the open space category.
Sure.
To put in a plug for the open space component, keeping in mind the Conservation Commission worked really hard last year to get that land grant that got $250,000 brought in. So all these other projects I've heard about, I've never heard of any of them. Very rarely do you get money brought in, working hard. We got the money. We didn't have to go and chase down that additional money. So, you know, I just want to remind you of that, because we did work really hard to bring that money back. And if you look at that as bringing money back in, this project only cost $50,000. So it's an interesting angle to look at, because, you know, the commission did not have to force me to do all that work, which I did.
My concerns are just one slight angle, just
Yep.
taking out the recreation ability for life. It's not a development, it just seems like, especially with the zoning now, Stone Row, now you have to go to zoning board of, the planning board, anytime you wanna put a park in. Zoning wise, there's only one person on that whole side that has an issue, and that would be the one house there. So, I mean, now that it's harder for us to permit parks of the future, you know, try to name another place where access is,
I can show you a dozen. I've been here for 7 years looking for park and rec land, because the more fields I can find park and rec that don't impact wetlands, that's half the time I spend is looking for active rec locations.
Yeah.
Because there's always a open space component to it, and it protects other parcels that might not be ideal. So trust me, I've been looking for years.
Oh, yeah,
I can give
it-
you a list of a dozen parcels that could accept soccer fields, because in the end, if I can find a soccer field somewhere else, it will protect a parcel like this, which is really more destined.
That's all
to
gonna be very, very important this year when we do the open space and recreation plan again.
Correct. Good
The
plug
open
for
space
that.
and recreation plan that we're quoting from
Right,
has
is being
expired.
redone. Yep, I know.
It's gonna be redone this spring.
Isn't there a pretty good pool of money now in the open space? After the return from last year of.
Yeah, I
I
don't
thought
remember what the
I
exact
thought
numbers
they
are.
had the most amount of money in it. I
Take,
think.
I'm sure it's one of the highest
Yeah,
reserves right now,
Putting
yeah.
150 back in
Yeah.
yeah.
really helped.
But we'll be doing that, meeting after next, I believe, we'll look at all the numbers. Well, thank you. Any more questions, James?
Do you have more information on your CSA at your stand or online,
Yep,
or
at our
how are
stand. Yep.
at your stand? Okay.
Yep, and we'll also be at the Georgetown Business Alliance this Friday.
Okay.
And we'll have CSA
So that-
brochures there as well.
That's how residents go. Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
Noonan's Friday night?
Thank you.
Paul, all set?
Yep, sounds good.
Thank you all
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to answer
Understand more than I
additional
did when
questions
before
on the
you came.
conservation restriction if they come up.
I'll
Steve has
send
my,
you. I'll send Steve an email of all the things I came up with, and give you,
yeah,
rather than go through them here.
And I'll just forward it on. I won't even.
no, I'm happy to. I mean, I'm happy to meet with you to go.
You will
Sometimes
not.
it's easier in person. I'm happy to just to meet with anyone who's interested. I have a few select pages of the presentation I mentioned that Greg Watson did. I actually sent the entire presentation to Steve, and so he'll email to you, but it just has some really interesting statistics in there on the significance of local farming to the Massachusetts economy. It's pretty impressive how much the Northeast actually is contributing to the agricultural economy of New England and the country. Very interesting. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you for working so hard, Vanessa.
Pleasure.
My brother's the editor
Keep
for
up the good
Agribot.
work.
I read about it monthly.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you all so much.
Okay, we've gone over the Wheelerbrook Farm CR. Next in line would be the Brocklebank Museum Historic Preservation. And we have Chris Comiskey and,
Rick Detweiler.
Rick Detweiler, Eddie Desjardins, come on up, guys. Come on up, please. Hey,
I'll be the monkey.
I'm not sure exactly what page it's on.
Under the table, easier.
There were,
Is this old business? Where's this under?
It's
Oh, hey, I have it.
Oh, okay.
heck did you get a blue sheet?
I don't know.
Would you print that?
I don't know.
You
The
robbed
Jaws?
me, didn't you? Oh my God. No, it's
Masonry? Okay.
something completely different. You see, and Rick, Chris, Ed, have taken the liberty of, taking the two estimates that you were kind enough to email to the committee. And the first one looks like, right there is your project proposal, the suggested, right? And then you have the, this is the one, I believe, from S&S Masonry.
Yes.
This one came in, if I'm not mistaken. Why don't you take it away? Take it away.
Well,
Ed,
Either that.
Chris?
Chris, if you can just
You
give
can
a
introduce
quick introduction, and then Rick and I
Yeah,
will
and then
fill
we'll
in
handle the rest.
gaps.
Well,
Unless-
okay, you guys have all the papers on the estimates, so
Okay.
I'll let you take it.
All right, well, I guess I'll introduce it with
Which
the
is the
fact that
first
the Brocklebank House, I know most of you are aware by now, is probably, I consider it the equivalent of the Boston Stone to Georgetown, as the Boston Stone is to Boston, because it really is where Georgetown started, when it was still New Rowley or the West Parish of Rowley. And there are 17th century first period pieces in that house. So it really is one of the oldest buildings in town. And it's, of course, a museum, and it's a very significant early tavern from the 18th century. I don't know how many of you have been in there and visited it, but I assume you all have. The important thing about it is to know that we've tightened up the outside of the building over the last 5 years or so with different projects, with the fence and signs and the roof, which was really critical because, you know, the water was getting in there and doing serious damage. Now, unfortunately, after doing all that, we realized, of course, that it's sitting on a foundation that is slowly kind of subsiding as the traffic went by and as they did all the construction along Main Street there. The vibrations actually had a severe effect on that building, and the foundation was dry laid loose fieldstone. And so what you've got in there now are a bunch of cracked fieldstone walls, and some of which are bulging inward about
They're buckling inward.
close
which
to
doesn't
maybe
help.
over 8 inches or so.
Yeah.
But what the point is that it's not in imminent danger of collapse. But if you had another Cape Ann earthquake, as we did in 1755, it was enough to knock the weather vane off Faneuil Hall in Boston. Those walls would not continue to stand. In fact, the place that you remember where they call it the slave hole, but it's actually a part of an interior foundation wall. Actually, since Ed has started his tenure here, it actually has subsided and collapsed. So there are sections of walls that need to be rebuilt from the ground up.
Let me mention one thing I think that's important. With the new school now on its way, you're going to see a lot of heavy truck traffic in that area.
Yep.
And I think it can help, but certainly will be more in danger of buckling that sort of wall or causing it to loosen up even further.
So there's no, what I'll say is there's no really superficial work in here. We talk about the sort of mild pointing of the East L foundation, but at this point, even though they're small, there are little holes and cracks that you can look out through the wall and see the sky. Even though it's been fairly well tightened up from the outside, there are places where rodents get in. We've got, you know, holes that under doors where they're missing a door sill that animals can actually crawl in there, and we've had raccoons in there. We have heart traps. They got into the archives room once, and they can do serious damage if you know what a squirrel can do to windows when they get in there. But anyway, so the point is that this is part of a phased program that we've done, which is to get the outside tight, to keep the elements out, and then now we got to carry the whole building on a sound foundation because you really don't want it to settle into the ground.
So it's basically a foundation problem that we want to address in this case, and before it gets any worse.
There's also an old heating system in there that's now defunct. You couldn't begin to install a new one until you actually enclosed and repaired the exterior walls of the foundation. And a lot of that is old pipes and things that need to be removed even to get proper access to do the repairs. So there is some mild demolition, but it's only an old steam heating system and an old boiler that are no longer used.
That's 50 or 100 years old. That goes way back.
Yeah.
But that's not part of this effort.
It has to be because of access to get to do the repairs. It's very minor, but there's enough salvaged iron and metal in there to practically pay for the removal of this stuff because it's all old cast iron pipe and boiler. It may not have been spelled out in detail in the first initial proposal, but for the bids that we got, we created a little more detailed scope of work. That's a little more refined. So when you look at the estimates, you'll see they've included things like the removal of the boiler and the pipes and things like carpentry. There is a missing stair to access the back entrance on the northwest corner. And we need some safety issues. A couple of stone steps are missing at the bottom of the stairs to access the basement.
What
So
about the doghouse area? I mean, that kind of.
they, that's a contractor term for the front entryway.
Oh, okay.
It's the
We shouldn't really be
projecting,
doing that.
This is what
Okay.
contractors
Yeah.
and, yeah,
it's the projecting space of that little room that
that
comes out
front
at the
entry,
entrance.
it would
Like
be
a
called a
mudroom?
porch in
Yeah.
the 17th or 18th century, but it's an entry portico kind of thing. Entryway.
So I'm looking for the quote part portion. I'm a little bit confused. Is the boiler not included in the quote?
It's in the, it's definitely in advantages. Stickney knows that's in there because we went over that with them and they bid on the same documents.
The advantage, the
It's
second
spelled out
page,
in
I think,
advantage on the
Section F.
section, yeah.
Section
Six, it's number 6, section
Gonna
F.
be
and,
removed,
The clean out, it's just part of the clean out.
okay.
It's all non-functional,
non-functional boiler, okay,
obsolete
okay.
stuff that's in there. It's just basically clean
That's
out.
fine, okay.
There are also a lot of artifacts down there that the
I
Historical
was just wondering,
Society needs to store.
Are you running gas in there now?
Not actively.
There
There's
isn't-
no heating
there's no
in the,
heating in the system
building.
in the
They
building.
shut it down for the winter and turn off the water.
Oh, okay,
That's phase 4.
okay. No, that makes sense. No,
Yeah.
I
Can I
just,
put it in the wood stove?
Yeah. The number
not
that we're looking
recommended.
for, basically, if you look between, I don't know, 45 and 50,000, it seems
Yeah,
that
they're
both of
fairly
them came in.
close.
Yeah, they both came in
And
that same range.
Reasonably
First one
speaking.
was for 42,224.
Yeah.
Yep, and the
Okay, what was the
second
second one?
totaled around 52.
Second was 52.
52, 125.
Yeah.
This is probably reasonable to expect. It's, it's rebuilding stone walls that have been, they were originally dry laid. They would need to be using pointing mortar
and
and
stuff now. Yeah.
this time, but we've got a proper mix for that. And it's a rebuilding, not just a patch and repair type pointing job in a couple of areas. So these estimates seem reasonable and fair, but not,
I was
exorbitant.
surprised they
That's
were
all-
as
that's all-
close
that's-
as they were.
These are
Yeah.
slightly higher than being the original request.
Yeah, the original request
that
was
was
a
why
little
we asked for it.
optimistic, and that's why when you look at something more closely, which we did, you find a lot more that needs to be done to even get to the repairs.
And I'm really glad, and I don't remember who asked for it, but.
I
I'm
think it
glad
was
we
you.
did. Because one of the things that sometimes happens is we start a project
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
thinking we need this
Yeah.
much money, in good faith, everybody's under the
Right.
impression that
That's
that's how
right.
much. You start it, you
Yeah.
get rolling
You get
into it.
surprised.
It's better
Prizes
not
along
to
the
be
way.
too
You have to come
optimistic.
back the next year for more.
Yeah,
And
better.
there's nothing more
Yeah.
aggravating than
Yeah,
that.
better
because-
not to be too optimistic.
Yeah,
So we're talking in the $50,000 range, that's what I'd say.
at
And
least
the-
52.
when you have the 10%,
There'd be
contingency or whatever.
contingency in there, yeah.
The other thing is that we could adjust the scope slightly, but I don't consider anything that we've put in here as unnecessary. Some of it might be higher priority than the rest.
Yeah.
But, pointing the cracks that you can see through is just as important to me as the stuff that makes it unstable. That's maybe not unstable, but it's letting rodents and things in.
So you don't see any
Weather.
phasing at all possible in this?
Well, that's part of it. It depends totally on funding.
Yeah.
That's why these are preliminary estimates and not final bid documents.
Is it
It's
logical to
because we
break it down
need,
into phases?
what we've discovered in looking closely at it is that when you start to try to look at these as phases, the foundation is one phase. There's economies of scale. To bring a contractor back to just do the little East L, it doesn't make sense.
While they're on the
It's a
site,
small
it makes
part of
sense.
it,
Yeah. To keep
But while they're there, it's a substantial amount of work that makes it more easy to attract somebody to bid it. If the little sections of the project are too small, you find people don't want to bother, or else
Really?
they'll throw in a high bid and say,
yep.
I mean, I think it's an economy of scale. I think I would do the whole job. I'd rather, phase it, but it's all necessary. When you go look at this, you'll see. It's none of it is frivolous, and none of it is really low priority, as I see it.
Well, yeah, we're talking
I mean,
about
there are
a
relative,
piece of the town's
but-
history here. And let me just throw out the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe's brother,
Yeah.
Charles Beecher, was very much involved here. And you have personalities and people that have lived in this house that's 1660.
Yep, and it's an 18th century tavern that's very rare, and the tavern sign itself,
Oh, there
which
you
has
go.
the
Now you're
musket.
talking.
Well, it has the musket
Now
ball
you're
holes
talking,
from
right.
the Revolution
Yeah,
that the
that's
guys
that's
fired
another
at the
good
British
point. Yeah.
Redcoat. It was named the General Wolfe Tavern. After the Revolution, it became the White Horse Tavern.
We have the original sign with its bullet holes in it. It's something that if you ever
It's
have,
extremely
you ever
rare.
have an opportunity
It's
to
extremely
see it,
rare.
you gotta go by.
And the chimney itself, with a large fireplace, one of the biggest ones
Largest
in
in
Essex
Essex County, right.
It's really 17th century, although the house was rebuilt in the 18th century and looks 18th century. It's really much older, and it's been kind of rebuilt.
Is it as old as your house there on not the house you're looking at down by the horse farm?
It's 1600s.
225, is it
225.
East Front?
25 East Main, yeah.
Yeah, East Main, yeah.
Yeah, it looked like 1600s.
That must be the oldest.
That was renovated a little more than the Brocklebank house has been.
It still
Brocklebank
needs
is
it again,
intact.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for bringing in the estimates and
Okay.
the due diligence
Yes.
to go get them, and glad we have them now.
Good.
Yeah.
Now we have good
Well,
numbers.
It's a very needy building. I think it's very
wanna
important
make sure
to
it's saved.
Georgetown.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a treasure of Georgetown,
Mm-hmm.
if that wall ever collapsed.
Oh, no, no, too many school children going through there.
Yes.
Well, yeah, and it is
Yeah.
important. There are a couple of places where one of the contractors going through and he takes the 2x4 that's holding up the main beam in the tavern room and he says,
Moves it
this
over."
isn't holding anything. He takes it away.
Yeah, we
So
take-
I did put it back with a architect supplied rock under it that's now carrying some weight, but only until the contractor gets there.
Actually, Harry has a good point there. We take 150
Yeah.
school kids through each spring, and it's part of the tour. And we spend the day kind of taking them through room by room and pointing out the historical aspect of the house.
And we
Should
do
I-
limit
should
the
Should I date
by
myself and
room
said I was one of those
capacity.
kids?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's been
19 something?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Well, we
gone.
do
a long
limit
time.
it to a certain number per room, so
Yeah, I was
there's
35 though when I went
Say-
through. I never graduated.
Yeah, we split it into groups.
So you don't shove 150 of them all in one room,
Just
no.
remind the audience when they can visit the Brocklebank
I think we
Museum.
stuffed some
When?
kids in the.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Every
when
other
is it
Sunday.
open,
Couple
Chris?
hours.
Yeah.
Well, we officially open in July, but if anyone in the group wants to have a private tour and see the cellar
We
and the.
try to
problems
stay
we have,
open those 2
you
weekends a
just-
month.
You just call me and I
Weekends
can
a
bring you
month.
Well,
anytime.
it's the only tavern I haven't drank in Georgetown, so maybe we should just go in there and have a beer.
We don't
so I can
serve,
close
sorry.
that loop, you know?
In case you all missed it in the Globe, they now have the Barrett Farmhouse beer being made by
Barrett's
Ipswich
Farm?
Ale, and
That's
I
right.
just restored Colonel Barrett's farm in Concord. It's now
Really?
become part of Minuteman National Park. But I think it would be fun to have an event where you might serve Colonel Barrett's beer in the tavern room there, because that's exactly who was in there, the militia.
Brocklebank Ale or
And
something.
I live in
Thank you.
Captain Adams' house. He was the captain of the militia.
But yeah, if anyone wants a private tour, just contact me. Right now it'd be a little hard because you'll have to shovel your way in.
Shovel
I'm not
away.
gonna do it. But once the snow is gone, I'd be happy to
Yes.
give any.
Thank
I'm
you.
gonna
Our
wait-
burglar
I'm gonna
detection
wait till you
system
restore
is
it and I know
footprints in
it's
the
safe.
snow right now.
It's safe.
Soon to be mud.
We do have an alarm. We
Soon
do
to
have an
be
alarm.
mud, right? Or what?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
The last thing on the agenda that I had under old business, as it should be like, I believe it's your second to last and last page. These are, you're looking at a spreadsheet of the residual funds.
Yeah, I saw that.
This one, Betty? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
And if you just want to take a look at it with me, we can act on this, we don't have to act on this, we can sit on it and think about it. There are a number of them. If you notice, the first four of those shown here, Project 7, 14, 15, 20. And number 25. Each one of those do not have the sundown language. We can't just sit here, somebody makes a motion in a second, and then we all sign the sheet and the money goes back. We cannot do that for those projects. All the others we can. Okay? But those we can't. If anyone wants to make a motion in a couple of weeks to move those back, what we'll have to do is, when you make your motion for recommending the projects, also make a motion that we move these funds at the same
Oh,
time.
okay.
And in the warrant article.
During the same meeting?
Pretty much during that same thing,
Yeah,
during
yeah.
that same motion, if
Yeah,
you know
I
what
see,
I'm
during a
saying.
motion, I see.
Right, and what we can do is, then the town meeting voters are actually the ones moving the money. And that's the only way I know to move it, okay, because we didn't have the
Okay,
sundown
makes
clause.
sense.
With
I think we-
respect to, I'm sorry?
Oh, I was talking with James a little bit, and some of these numbers aren't right. I think the first thing we need to do is make sure they tighten up the specs on the numbers.
Well, I don't know if the
Whi-
numbers
which-
are wrong. I just don't know
Are
why
you
the funds
refer-
haven't been used. That's what I was saying.
Well, that's a concern to me. I mean, I think the rails and access preservation are great projects, but they just haven't been used. So, I mean,
Oh, well, bear in mind that we can't move those anyway, that has to be done at a town meeting.
right, but we can
And-
make a recommendation that they be done, but I'm just saying,
I owed you
it's been
one.
mentioned a couple times that we buy land for the town to use, and we don't provide access and trails for them to get to.
Right, right.
Lufkin's Brook, the community gardens where someone's gonna get hurt,
Yeah.
Bailey Lane,
Yep.
Driftwood Farms, all these places that should have public access, for people to enjoy,
Well,
but nothing's been done.
that was the idea behind it, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Who's supposed to be spending it?
That's
just-
Concom, that's Concom money. Yeah.
One.
That could keep people busy working. Some of the local contractors can do that work.
One app that the GHC owed you guys an explanation on is project number 34 in the amount of 9,000.
Yep. Historic
And-
monuments.
We are currently,
You gonna be using that?
that is
Jim?
currently active.
That
We
is
have
active?
5 signs
Okay,
in the estimated value of 4,000.
okay.
And one additional sign those are to give you more detail, there's 4 signs that are a 3x4 of historical significance in Georgetown,
Can I
valued
ask,
around $4,000.
Without going into specific details.
Yeah, I mean, we're
Um,
active.
You're active, it's an active fund, it's
Yes.
being used, it just hasn't happened yet.
Yes.
So as far as I'm concerned, I'm drawing a line through it.
Right.
Because that's one that, the idea behind it is if the funds aren't gonna be used, then we vote it back.
Right.
But if there is intent and they're still active and they're going,
Right.
you don't vote it back.
Identify it.
Yeah,
I mean, Harry Murch Park has
Get
been
rid of it.
restored now for 2 or 3 years. I'd be hard pressed to say anything being done now could be lumped in, and I'd be concerned that it'd be used for upkeep and not for intended purposes.
Harry Murch Park Restoration?
Yeah, that was
well,
finished 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, there's 23,000 left in there.
Yeah, I don't know the residual of how much would be unused, but I would assume there'd be some. Because 23,000, like you said, we've said before, is a lot for certain items that need to be completed.
Yeah, well,
And-
the worry now is that we're not completing items, that the items have been complete, and that we're pushing very, very close
Understood.
to that definition of maintenance.
Yes, that's what
That
it is.
newly changed definition of maintenance under the act.
Very close.
And, at
Okay.
any rate, that may be something we'd wanna vote back, we'll see. Historic Structures Survey. Refresh my memory on that one, because
Structures.
that's number
46.
46 there, and there's, is that that's the heck is it called when you do? when
Well,
you hire-
first of all,
you hire somebody to go out and do the,
The districts, you mean?
the assay for the districts?
I don't think so. I don't think it's districts.
no, that's village. You're thinking of village, which is 87. First of all, 9,000, I believe, came out of that. 13. Are you looking at 13 now or 4? Or am I looking at an outdated one?
Looking at 046, it was done in 2008.
I'm looking at an outdated chart here. Let me see.
Second of
46 is 13,000. I believe 9,000 is coming out of that shortly.
Okay.
If not,
Active, it's an active fund.
yes,
and
it's
you're using it.
active.
Okay, draw a line through it, kids. Remember what we're doing here, we're identifying them.
Now, technically, 47 is still active. What the amount, like I was trying to say, of how much is going to be unused, I don't know at this time. Which I will-
how long
I
can
can
it be
find out.
active? I mean,
Well,
Like
until
you
it's
said,
no longer needed, but
restoration is to a point, I mean,
Well, there's a tree I believe that needs to be removed.
but is that maintenance now, or is
Yeah,
that,
that sounds like maintenance.
No, not necessarily.
If
How long
you're
is the
could
adding
be-
a tree, it might not be, but if you're just replacing a tree because it died, that's maintenance.
No, I disagree. Could be maintenance, could be trimming a tree that's there versus a tree that might have had a specific disease is not maintenance, that's removal and correction.
so if I'm correct, I wanna get this right for the record.
Oh, I don't wanna get into
034 is
semantics.
active,
boy, if I get in trouble, you can talk to my wife, because I
And
find that one hard to
446.
follow.
according to you, James.
I'm sorry?
034 is an active fund, so we'll take it off the list.
Yeah.
And
46 was.
046 is as well, right?
Right.
Is active as well. Okay, great. But, okay, I just wanna
And so is 47.
47 is active?
Correct.
Yeah, but, I don't think that's as active as the others. Maybe we could look at that and you could give us a better idea of what that looks like next
Right,
week.
what's the activity?
Well, we can define let's define maintenance then.
Yeah, well, we don't have to.
Okay.
The act already did. Maybe we can review that a little next
Okay.
week. It is 9 o'clock. The dawn comes early. Just wanted everybody to look at these. And just to point out that those first four, and, well, the fifth one's $25, but those first four, if you want to use them move that money back, it's gonna have to be done in a warrant article, okay?
Okay.
And it's gonna have to be for the same purpose. Keep that in mind.
Sure.
It has to go into the same pot, you mean?
Exactly, it's got to be
Yeah.
the same purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
So
great.
the Concom could actually, if they got off their duffs, they could actually use that, right?
I would hope so.
I don't know what you're referring to,
been
Paul,
The-
I'm
the
sorry.
Trails and access preservation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they could use either one of them.
Okay.
They can use the, number 14.
I've even offered help.
Or they can use
Send an email off
number
to Steve.
20.
Excuse me?
They
20.
can use 14 or 20.
I tell you one,
Oh,
the,
good point, yeah.
the most critical one is the community gardens, before someone gets hurt.
Safety.
I thought they were doing that.
It's ridiculous that someone hasn't got hurt, and it really should be done before someone gets seriously hurt.
Okay, any more discussion? Betty, did I hear you make a motion to,
I'd be happy to
What
do
they call
that
it?
motion,
The
yes.
Community
Community
gardens.
gardens.
is there a second for
Should be
Betty's
done
motion to adjourn?
immediately.
Yes.
I second that,
I
Chairman.
think Paul already built
Yes,
the,
I said yes, yes, yes. I will ask him. I'll send him an email.
all in
about that.
favor?
I've asked him,
Aye.
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 remind him every couple months.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
It's my pet peeve, but
But he was all.
Meeting
up
is
for it.
adjourned
I remember.
you can do it real easily.
at,
Yeah.
what is it?
I think.
9:07.
It's work, right?
Even if you don't get paid
Yeah.
for the local guy. to
Thank you
cut
very
the
much,
place and that
everybody.
local guy just